Episode 200 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast with adventure travel pioneer Richard Bangs. I've heard from outdoor retailers, brands, outfitters, and influencers that a constant challenge is engaging with new and existing customers. Multiple times a week, you scramble to post on social media, publish articles, blogs, videos, and more in order to grab attention. The problem is these posts are on passive mediums which lead to limited engagement and action. Today, a better option is a podcast, but you might think you don't have time, budget, or talent to produce a podcast. You do, and I'll show you how. Your podcast will reach more customers, helping them learn and get inspired, which will lead to stronger relationships and more sales. With a broader reach to an unlimited amount of customers, there is a clear opportunity to meaningfully impact a huge number of people. Your podcast will deliver these results and more, and I will show you the way. Go to podcastersworkshop.com/brainstorm to schedule your free brainstorm call, and we'll get your podcast on the path from idea to published. Visit podcastersworkshop.com/brainstorm. I'm excited and honored to have Richard Bangs on episode 200 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast today. Not only is this a milestone for the podcast, but I had a great time catching up with Richard. One of the founders of the adventure travel industry, Richard has racked up first ascents and numerous other adventures around the world. He is an author, television personality, and we talk about those early days on the Omo River, the founding of Sobek, and some innovative new projects he's working on. Hey, Richard, welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast.
Hey, well, good to be here.
Yeah, good to catch up with you. We were just chatting. I think it's been, mid-90s when we ran into each other in Seattle. That's been a long time.
I know, and we're still trucking.
That's right. We're still moving forward. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So how were you introduced to the outdoors originally? Was that as a kid?
Very much as a kid. I grew up on the East Coast, outside of Washington, D.C., and it is not that far from a number of really profound wilderness experiences. Practically in my backyard was the Potomac River, and that's really where I got started on rivers.
Oh, cool.
I used to raft down the Great Falls section of the Potomac, which is a wild section.
Wow.
And canoe there.
Uh-huh.
And then not much further, you get down to the Shenandoahs and the Appalachians, the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I used to go climbing, hiking, caving. We did a lot of spelunking.
Oh, wow.
A lot of limestone caves there. So almost every weekend when I was in high school, we would take off with a group of friends and we would explore the remote offerings of the region, and had a blast every time.
Wow, I bet. What was the raft like? What kind of raft did you run that river in?
Well, we put in at a place called Mather Gorge, which is right below Great Falls. Great Falls is a very large and significant waterfall that is not navigable. But just below it, there's a beautiful gorge with some very, very enticing rapids, challenging rapids.
Yeah.
Initially, I would canoe it down to a section called Little Falls. And then take out because it got too wild there. Then I bought one of these $18 inflatable rafts at Sunny's Surplus,
Okay.
and tackled this Little Falls section and capsized several times, but made it through and was exhilarated with it. And then said, "Boy, I can do this in other places," and started to sort of look at the radius of possibilities from Washington, D.C. And there are so many great rivers because of all the mountains there.
Right, yeah.
A lot of America's greatest kayakers and canoeists come from that region because of the topography. So I was off doing the Shenandoah, the Rappahannock, and the Cheat River, the Yakagini, the Upper Yak. Did all of these rivers in my little surplus inflatable raft, and it worked.
It worked.
Got me started. Yeah.
And so in college, you worked as a river guide too. Was that your first outdoor job?
It was. So when I got into college, I maintained my membership in something called the Canoe Cruisers Association, which is a large group of canoe enthusiasts in the D.C. area. My father, who worked for the CIA, used to canoe to work across the river, as did many people, the CIA headquarters over in Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole sort of subculture of canoeists. and that group went out to do the first canoe C2 descent of the Grand Canyon of the Colorado.
Wow.
With an outfitter called Hatch.
I remember
and
that.
yeah. And they came back, and I went to one of the meetings, and they showed these Super 8 films of water that I had never imagined was possible. It was just so out there, knocked me out.
Yeah.
That I went and I wrote Ted Hatch a letter, and I said, look, I'd love to come work for you. And rafting in the West was just getting started. It was a very, very new proposition, and it largely had to do with the fact that there were these Korean War surplus pontoon bridges that became available for $50 each, and you could put them on the big rivers like the Green and the Colorado, and then slap a motor on the back or put a frame on it, and you could take customers down these trips.
I didn't
So
know
I wrote Ted Hatch.
Started.
Yeah. And I wrote Ted Hatch, and he had taken Bobby Kennedy down a couple of years before, and all the publicity that came out of that sort of prompted this enormous awareness and desire to go experience the Colorado and the Grand Canyon. Before that, there had only been 100 people who had ever been down the Grand Canyon before 1959. Wow. And then it wasn't until the late 60s that it really started to become a thing. And when I wrote this letter, I said, hey, I've been down the Snake River, I've been down the Green River, and I named all these rivers on the East Coast that I had been down. And not neglecting to mention that these were East Coast rivers. And he immediately wrote me back and said, you're hired. So
whoa.
I went out at 18 years old and became a river guide in the Colorado River.
Wow. So you had quite the resume. He was impressed by that, obviously.
Well, he was impressed until he discovered that they were not West Coast rivers. I mean, they were little one-day trips on the East Coast.
A little different, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like, jumping into guiding? I mean, guiding, dealing with customers, that's a whole different avenue than just running rivers on your own, that's for sure.
Boy, that turned the axis of my world so profoundly, and it was the most gratifying and sort of wow-filled experience that I never even imagined that it existed. Before that, I'd been like any normal high school and college kid, and trudged through things and went through all the routines. But suddenly, I was catapulted into this world of nonstop adventure. It was very sort of romantic and cowboyish, and not only was it sort of never-ending excitement, but I loved meeting the clients, the guests. Suddenly, I was this skinny little teenager, and I was a river god to these clients, many of whom were just people that I admired and I felt I never could have access to these sorts of people in any normal life. So there were editors of magazines, there were movie producers, there were stars, there were. I mean, anybody back then, especially who took a trip like this, had to have some sort of exceptional personality and a boldness and wanting to try something that was, beyond the ken. Following in the footsteps of Bobby Kennedy. So they were of that ilk, pioneering, innovative, creative, enterprising people. Yeah. And I couldn't imagine how this world, beyond my normal orbit worked. And
That's
I
amazing.
I'd be at the campfire talking to I took down the president of MGM Pictures at the time.
Wow.
And I was just slapping myself, going, I can't believe it. We're not only equals, but he's looking up to me for all the answers.
Yeah.
Will it rain tonight? Where should I put my tent?
Right. Are we going to survive tomorrow?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I tell people all the time, the best days of my life were as a river guide on the Kern. It's just, you're right. I mean, all the things you said just encapsulated it perfectly. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the Kern is no slouch.
Kern's pretty wild.
Were you in the upper Kern?
Upper, lower, yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember the big deal for us was to go to the forks and put in at the forks and run all the way down to Kernville in one day. And the goal was to make it to the pizza place by dinner.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty fun. We did that a couple times. Yeah, wild though, as you say. But that was just for guides. That wasn't. We didn't do that commercially.
Yeah,
that was, pretty rugged. So tell our listeners about those first clients that you and John Yost guided in Ethiopia. How'd you find them?
Well, that was another challenge. So, ultimately, we cobbled together this enterprise to take a few rafts and friends over to Ethiopia, largely because John and I went to high school together.
Okay.
John, so we were lifelong friends and continue to be lifelong friends. His father was in the State Department, and he was the DCM in Ethiopia, the Deputy Chief of Mission.
Okay.
The number 2, and John was brought over on holidays to visit his family, and he would tool around Ethiopia and be amazed at what is the Tibet of Africa. It's got an average elevation of 8,000 feet, huge mountains and big rivers that pour off its plateau. And he would see some of these rivers in the canyons and go, wow, I brought him out to the Colorado to be my swamper for a couple of seasons. And so he too fell in love with the river experience. And he came back from one of these sorties and said, Richard, we have to go run a river in Ethiopia. It's amazing. And to this point, I don't think there'd been any overseas rafting. It had been relatively new in the Colorado and the Green. And we thought, this is a great idea. Let's do this. So we used the ambassador's pouch to get the rafts over, and we found sponsors to supply life jackets and rafts, and because we didn't have any money, and we got over there and did some first descents, and they were so beyond the Colorado. It was so wild. I mean, hippos and crocodiles and local peoples unlike any we'd ever seen before.
All right.
And first contact perhaps with peoples on the lower Omo River.
Sure.
An area that had no exposure to the outside world. So it was. We came back from that thing, and I said we should figure out a way that we can return. Let's see if we can find some clients willing to join us and experience this magic. And we took out an ad. I think we used the last of our resources. In the Wall Street Journal, they had a Thursday travel section back then. So we took out a small ad announcing, come do the second descent of the Omo River in Ethiopia.
Kind of like an Ernest Shackleton ad.
It was very much like that, yeah. Looking for crazy people. Yeah, return unlikely, whatever. Doubtful, yeah. And we got a few. So we came back and ran it commercially, under the banner of Sobek, this name that we came up with, which was the crocodile god worshipped on the Nile.
Okay.
And they loved it as much as we did. And I started to write articles, and we made a film of our second descent, and that did well. And suddenly it had some traction and currency, and more people, as they heard about it, thought it was a pretty cool thing and wanted to join us. And then as as that happened, we started to look at other rivers and started to go to other countries.
And did you continue to run ads and things, or did people just was word of mouth? How did that all happen? Just kind of took off.
Yeah, it's interesting as I look back now. We never really borrowed any money to make this whole thing get to where it is now, or where it got to. So we didn't sell shares or anything. We just we just were able to self-fund it because we happened to be very lucky at the right place at the right time with the right product and the right technologies to allow us to do this.
And some skills and ability to pull it off too. I mean, that's, that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we.
And were people? Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, we lived very frugally for the first several years.
In a guidehouse.
We lived in a guidehouse. Yeah. So
we've both been in one of those, or a few of those.
Yeah. So and we had we worked out of a little basement. George Went became our third partner, the owner of Oars.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Angels Camp and lived in the guidehouse. And George had a little basement with a single light bulb and a manual typewriter, and we'd go in there and pound out the brochures and and send it around. But we did not do any more ads.
Okay. So it was word of mouth, and
word of mouth took on. I mean, there were, as we grew, and got to be sort of middle-aged, then we had an advertising budget, so we did some advertising, but we've never done a lot. It really has continued mostly because of word of mouth and reputation and product.
Good product. Yeah, those first people, were they from around the world or U.S. based, or what were they like?
They were all Americans. They're all Americans.
All Americans.
Two of them were Americans working for the U.S. military. A couple in Ethiopia, in Asmara, which is now Eritrea. So they somehow read about it and they go, it's so close, let's do it. But one was a Pan Am hostess. And got another one. I think another was a filmmaker. So it was an eclectic group,
wide group
that somehow responded to it hit a nerve for them.
Well, ideas of adventure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was pretty authentic adventure back then.
So you got back from Ethiopia, jumped right into forming Sobek. What were some of the other rivers you did initially?
Well, I think the next sort of outreach we made after we covered several rivers in Ethiopia, we did a number in Ethiopia, including the Blue Nile. And then we went to New Guinea. And part of that came out of Lowell Thomas. We premiered our film that we made on the Omo River at the Explorers Club in New York, and Lowell Thomas was the president. And afterwards, he came up to me, and he said, that's amazing. I'd love to go there. I've never been. And he goes, well, you need to go to New Guinea. And you go, wow, really? Okay. He said, New Guinea is my favorite place. So that suddenly became our next marker, and we again cobbled things together and took over rafts and started doing rivers in New Guinea, in Papua New Guinea, and did a number of first descents there. And then from there we went to Chile. A lot of this was sort of random in that somebody who knew us recommended something. So George Went's cousin was the head of the Park Service in Chile, and said, you got to see this river called the Biobío. I've flown over it. It's incredible. So we went down, sight unseen.
That's a thing too. You guys did all this stuff sight unseen. You had no idea what you were getting into.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I've only done that once, and it's just kind of scary. But man,
where was that?
That was in Nepal. We did the I'm drawing a blank on the name of it.
One of the Kosis?
No, the Karnali.
Oh, you did the Karnali?
Yeah.
Whoa.
With Stan Bohr and
Stan Bohr.
I don't know if Kate was on that trip or not. Yeah, it was a crazy trip. We had David Ripley connected me with those guys, and we went over to Nepal we did a trek for a little bit, and then we went and walked into this river, and it was a fam trip with the outfit out of New Zealand. They were kind of putting it together, and Sobek was wanting to put it in the catalog, so we did this fam trip. It's the second one. And the previous group said, "Oh, you don't need your sleeping bags. You don't need your rain gear. It's hot. The water's beautiful." So David and I were sitting in the back listening to this conversation thinking, I don't go anywhere without my rain gear. And sleeping bags probably going to be a good idea,
Yeah.
And David says, "Yeah, this is kind of a cluster, isn't it?" I said, "Well, it's a little early to tell." You know how David was, right?
Oh, yeah.
But sure enough, we got on the river, and the second day, people started to get sick because they didn't do a good job of making sure the Nepalese were washing their hands and cleaning food and stuff. And then the third day, it started raining. And it rained, that monsoon rain, for 4 days. And
were there people that did not have rain gear?
Oh, yeah. There were people that didn't have rain gear. Somebody fortunately found a bunch of ponchos buried in one of the dry bags, so we were at least able to keep people somewhat dry. But the river came up and just became this boiling cauldron of brown, ugly, nasty water. And, it was just, a bunch of boats flipped. I was in Stan's boat, and our boat was the only boat that didn't flip. We had 2 boats get ripped, and by the third day, we had the elderly couple. They weren't that old, but the oldest of the group. They were looking around, going, "We're going to walk out. We're done." And we looked at them and said, "Well, there's really nowhere you can walk out. We have to do this." But it's just crazy. Yeah. So going down without seeing it is just, man.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Nobody to talk to. That's amazing.
No, we did a lot of those. Yeah. I think the Indus in Pakistan was the one after the BOBO, and that was. It sounds like the Karnali, and it was this massive river.
Yeah,
it was in flood and with bad weather, and
I think I took my camera out only once that trip. I got one photo.
Yeah, wow.
So when you were starting Sobek, what were some of the challenges and obstacles you guys ran into? I mean, was it tough getting permits to go on? Did you have to get permits? Could you just go over there? What were some of the obstacles?
Well, it is always interesting to look back and in the context of then comparing to the context of now, because I think it would be much more difficult to launch a company like Sobek in present day compared to what we happen to do. We never got any permits. I don't think permits existed.
Did you need special permission for governments or something like that, or local?
We didn't do any of that because nobody knew what we were doing.
Okay. You showed up and did it, and they sent you on your thing and looked at it. Okay.
And it got us into trouble. I mean, we did the first descent of the Euphrates River in Turkey, and we had tried to get some sort of permit for that, and they said no. It goes into Kurdistan. And then it goes into Syria. So we just got on a country bus and took our stuff to the put-in, from what we could tell from the topo maps, and threw our rafts in and headed down the Euphrates through these deep gorges and beautiful ruins, these Seljuk ruins and such. And then we finally got to a bridge where, close to the Syrian border, where there were all these guards, and they were yelling at us to pull over and stop. And the river was really fast, so we couldn't figure out what to do. So we just paddled harder until we got around the bend. But it could have ended differently. Because we did not have any permits on that.
They didn't start shooting. That's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the one place early on that was. This is a little further on, but there was beginning to get some awareness of opportunity, and that was in China when we did the Yangtze. So they decided that their great rivers and the headwaters were valuable, just as Everest and other Himalayan peaks were valuable as far as permits. So they put up they asked for $1 million for us to do the first descent of the Yangtze. We got them down, I think, finally to $250,000.
Holy cow.
And ordinarily that would be just way beyond anything we ever could have afforded. But we put it out there. We'd been in business then for 15 years, I think.
Yeah, I think I remember when you guys did that. Yeah.
So that was we did it in '89.
Yeah.
So, or 87 we did it. So we had a good client list by this point. A lot of people who loved first descents.
Oh, right.
So we sent an invitation out and said, look, it's expensive. It's going to be $20,000 a person or something. But we had enough people who signed up for it, and we had a couple of sponsors that we could pay the permit fee and get down the Yangtze. But beyond that, I don't know that there were any others where we needed permits.
Nothing. Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Today, if you tried, well, first of all, any country in the world that has got a river has two things at this point. They have a vineyard and they have rafting.
Yeah, that's right. So, that's a good point. And, yeah. So, what do you have a trip that you had the most fun on, or was just a combination of the most adventurous and you had fun doing it, or anything that you like? That was just a unique, fun, once in a lifetime experience. They all were. I mean, that's the thing.
They all were. Right. Yeah. I mean, it was. I did this book, River Gods, which was sort of a coffee table catalog of our initial first descents. And beyond that, I think John Yost put together a list that under Sobek, the banner of Sobek, so that includes many, many trips that I was not on, and trips that John was not on, but Sobek Guides put together, and it came up to 200 and some first descents.
Wow!
So I mean, the company did a lot.
A lot, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you know what it's like. It's such a thrill.
Yeah.
To be turning a corner, an unknown corner, and not know it's there, and sharing it with friends. I did some mountaineering. I did a book called Peaks, climbing various peaks around the world, and I sort of came to the conclusion that there is some radical differences in those two adventure experiences. When you climb a mountain, it becomes more and more of a solitary endeavor. The higher you go, the more layers you put on, the less communication you've got with other people. Yeah. And
kind of an endeavor of endurance at some point too. I mean, it's just it's 1 foot in front of the other. You got a heavy pack on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a comfortable or fun experience.
Yeah.
It really is an internal challenge. And it's not really, besides the fact that you work as a team, it's not really an ecstatic group experience. Whereas rafting was almost the opposite.
Yeah.
In most raft trips, you end up, shedding your clothes, and you're exposed to the sensations of sun and water, and it's a very sensual sort of thing. But you're also paddling or rafting, as a team, and the deeper you go on a trip, the more the team, I think, bonds and coalesces and becomes sort of a single unit and becomes more like a family.
Yeah.
So it's so much the opposite. It's much more of a social experience. And for us to come together over and over again with these various teams, most of whom were former Colorado guides, friends of mine, and accept these challenges with these goals. Can we get down this river, together safely? It was a very meaningful and enriching and very powerful set of experiences. So I don't know that I could cite one that stood out from the rest. They all had different attributes.
That's the thing too. Yeah, everything's different, and they're all fun. But they're unique people, unique places. Yeah.
I mean, the biggest circus we probably had was the first descent of the Zambezi in Africa, because at that point the media had glommed onto what we did. And ABC came out with a full team, and National Geographic was there, and the president of Zambia launched the trip, and BBC was there. Just tons of media. So we were all sort of overly conscious of what's going on, and we had 2 helicopters flying above us the whole time, and teams setting up. And at the same time, besides rapids, which were always an allure for us back then when adrenaline was part of our repertoire.
Right.
But besides that, it was a very rich wildlife and cultural experience, and there were landmines. So we had to take 2 sappers from the Rhodesian army with us, and we would land at a beach, the proposed campsite, and they'd have to jump out with their landmine detectors and sweep the beaches before we could get off. So that added another element.
That's another element of something to deal with. Holy cow!
Yeah. And then we had a crocodile bit one of the boats, which had happened many times before, and hippos biting boats, etc. But it was, all in all, it was sort of an overdose of an experience. But
together,
the team really bonded. Doug Tompkins was on that trip.
Oh, cool.
And he became, a good friend of all of us as a result of it.
Yeah. So. And eventually you got into writing and publishing and some filmmaking, and were early in the internet game with Mungo Park. What was that like? Completely different from rafting, I'll bet.
Well, it was a different type of pioneering.
Right. Yeah.
And it did have, I think a lot of the same feelings of pioneering that comes from pioneering. You're right. I was always interested in communication, and always wanted to sort of share the various experiences that we had. And I found some sort of internal satisfaction in doing something, a first ascent, and then sitting down and trying to recapture it, because it felt like you were living it a second time. And thinking about it a little more, and trying to understand it, trying to decode it, and then trying to articulate it in a way where it made sense. And I love that sort of twice visit, concept, in which writing allowed for me, and filmmaking. And then Mungo Park, that was just a wonderful opportunity that I again didn't really anticipate. But it came out of an early adoption of the internet and the graphical user interface. So one of the first web browsers was Mosaic, and in the early 90s, that was Mark Andreessen's thing, and there was a group out of Sebastopol called O'Reilly and Associates that had taken that and started their own version of it called GNN, the Global Network Navigator. And I read about them and was excited because I had been frustrated for a long time with the inability to spread the word, to evangelize in a multidimensional way. What it was like to go down one of these rivers, or to take one of these adventures. At this point, we're doing all manner of adventure travel. A catalog, for instance, we put out these gorgeous catalogs.
Beautiful catalogs, yeah.
And loved it. So proud of it. Would spend months putting them together. But I would always be a little disappointed when it finally came to fruition and I would distribute it, because there might be a 2-week trip in Nepal on the Karnali, and there'd only be enough space to have one thumbnail and a few paragraphs of description.
Right.
Whereas the experience itself, lent itself to a book length.
Yeah.
A coffee table book as to what happened or what could happen if you took the trip. So when the internet, when digital first popped its head, I jumped onto that, and we did a catalog with a CD-ROM in it.
I remember that.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that, because suddenly we were able to really fill out with a lot more space.
Right.
Slideshows for every trip, and sounds, so you could hear the gamelan music of Indonesia, or the roar of a lion or something, or a hippo,
or an impending rapid.
Oh yeah, sounds of rapids. We had so much fun mixing the sounds for that thing.
Yeah.
And it was a catalog, so it was an enhanced catalog, and that became popular. And then I went up to visit Sebastopol with the GNN, and we spent the weekend together just brainstorming, and we came out of it going, let's build a travel website. So we built what I still believe it was the first travel website, which was mtsobek.com.
Okay.
In 93 or 94 or something. And from that, we started to do virtual expeditions. So we went to Antarctica, and through the website, we were doing live chats and reporting on what we were seeing in Antarctica via satellite, through the internet, through the web. And this didn't go unnoticed. So I got a call from Microsoft, from Melinda French Gates, who had been following everything that I've been doing, and said, will you please come to Microsoft? We want to do something like this in the travel space. And that was a big soul search for me. I had never thought about Microsoft ever, except for, as an operating system. Right. But, she promised, an unlimited budget and I could hire my friends. So that's when I went to Microsoft and launched this idea that I had, Mungo Park, which was, essentially an adventure travel magazine with some of the best writers around. I was able to go out and hire extraordinary writers and photographers and filmmakers, and we went, and for a couple of years we went around the world with a lot of celebrities we had on board. We took Tom Clancy to shuttle launch, and we took Martha Stewart sea kayaking around Newfoundland, and Lyle Lovett on a motorcycle trip across Chile.
Oh, cool.
The length of Chile, on and on. It was crazy. It was
How
so
many
much
years
fun.
did that last?
About 2.5 years. Okay. And then, then they came to their senses because there was no money in what I was doing. And that, it kind of morphed into Expedia. So, that became the money machine.
Gotcha.
It's like, rather than tell these great stories, why don't we sell the stories?
Sell the stories, right. Yeah, tell the stories and then sell the trip, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, so then I spent several years, with building Expedia from scratch.
Wow, fun. Yeah.
Which was also fun, I have to say.
I'll bet.
It was different, but it was pioneering and it was fun.
Right.
So.
And then you got into movies and television after that, right?
Yes,
a couple of movie things and some TV stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd always been involved in some fashion with filmmaking. Back to the Omo River.
You filmed the first trip, right? Yeah, you had film all the way.
Yeah. So we, as Sobek was growing and we were doing more and more, I would often assemble a film crew and we'd go off and film what we were doing. So, many of our first descents and such were documented. And then, we dabbled in I dabbled in various variations of that thing. I was a stuntman on a series of river films, and then I not that long ago, I co-produced an IMAX film on the Nile.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah.
Mystery of the Nile. That was a lot of fun. And then I had a TV series on PBS for about 8 years. So I produced that and was the host of that series.
Did you like doing TV?
I liked doing TV. It was Adventures with Purpose. It was called, and it was fun to find ways to document a journey, but with a goal in mind. So every show we did, we were trying to find some unique attribute of a destination that could contribute to global knowledge or lessons about how to better live our lives or manage the world, that kind of thing. So
we could use some help there now.
I know. I really did enjoy doing that series. it's a nice body of work.
Yeah, you have an amazing body of work. I mean, from filming that first trip to all the other stuff you've done, it's just phenomenal. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so it's been good. I just got back from Zimbabwe where I
cool.
shot a series of films. Zambia and Zimbabwe.
Nice.
We shot 3 short films.
Oh, awesome.
Which
can't wait to see those.
We're editing now.
Yeah.
They'll be ready fairly soon. Yeah.
Cool. Who were some of the mentors that helped you along the way or worked with you along the way? Did you have any folks that kind of encouraged you? I mean, obviously, the lure of the trip is an encouragement enough sometimes, but.
That's an interesting question. That's one I should have thought about more, but
well, you guys were kind of winging it too. I mean, I don't know, you were doing some first experience type stuff, so it's tough to have someone mentor you if you're doing the first ascent, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly a lot of people that I looked up to, but I don't know that they were mentors in sort of the Sheryl Sandberg type of sense.
Right. Inspirational mentors.
Yeah, like I gathered our early board of advisors. I back in the 70s.
Wow.
I picked out probably maybe a half a dozen. I should look for our stationery back then. Half a dozen people that I admired and got them on our board of advisors. So Edmund Hillary was on it. Doug Tompkins was on it. Yvonne Chouinard was on it. Roy Robbins.
Wow.
Who else? I think Hap Klopp. So yeah, they were ones I recruited, and they would, as on the board, they would give a little advice here and there, but I can't say that I was ever close. Mm-hmm. Doug Tompkins may have been the closest just because we did some trips.
Yeah.
There are people that I've been truly impressed with who have influenced me. Since I was at Microsoft, a man named Paul Moritz has been a real inspiration to me and mentor, I'd say. He was the number 3 person at Microsoft for a long time, and has become an ardent conservationist in Africa.
Oh.
So, I was with him on this last trip, and I realized it was my 7th trip with him to Africa. Mm-hmm. And he's a quiet philanthropist there. He goes over and funds a lot of different projects to help Africa in many different ways. Mm-hmm. But doesn't do it loudly or publicly. He's a brilliant, smartest man I've ever met.
Wow.
So I love working with him on those sorts of things.
I bet.
Another I think mentor in that sort of log is a former producer, Peter Guber. I guess he's still a producer, but he owns the Golden State Warriors and is an owner of the Dodgers, and was a significant producer, probably the top producer in Hollywood during the 80s and 90s, and was CEO of Sony. Did that ruin your thing?
No, that's all right. No, it's okay. There's all kind of noises that pop up.
Okay.
I take it as it comes. I can edit some of it out, and some of it's okay. That's one of the beauties I love of this is just having a conversation and life and things happen. What are you gonna do? Yeah. So Peter Guber has remained a good friend, and we've traveled around the world to many places. But I've always liked his sensibility and his keen sense of curiosity. He wants to see everything and experience everything, and I've worked with him to make a lot of these things happen. Cool. And the film, he's made many Oscar-winning films, from Rain Man to Color Purple and on and on and on. But the film that he is most proud of, and I work with him on it a little bit, is Gorillas in the Mist. Because that film was often credited with sort of changing the consciousness about the fate of the mountain gorillas, and launching
various nonprofits, and getting the country of Rwanda behind the idea that gorillas are their greatest asset, and they should be doing everything they can to protect and preserve, which they do.
Right.
So they were on the brink of extinction, and that film truly made a difference. And
They've turned it around.
Peter's proud of that. And we're working on a series right now that's trying to do that same sort of thing with cultures.
Oh, great idea. Yeah, what are you working on these days? That was my next question.
Well, a couple of things. I'm working with Peter Guber on this project. It's called Collision, and it's about the crash of first world cultures into original cultures and how that affects them.
Interesting.
And we shot a pilot in New Guinea. But I'm also working on Stellar, Steller. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that yet. I gotta get that.
So it's a travel platform for mobile that I co-founded last August.
Oh, okay.
And it's where you can go to tell stories about your travels or your adventures.
Cool.
And
anybody can?
Anybody can.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
There are about 186 countries or so that have stories on there now, and well over 1 million stories. And it's doing pretty well.
Cool. We'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, Stellar.
I haven't heard of that. Steller.
Yes, it stands for storyteller.
Oh, okay. I like it.
So you can go. It's an app, so you can download it and you can create spectacular stories with all the tools.
Cool. That
are there with video and text and photos, and we're trying to distinguish it from Instagram and others with several positive attributes. It has no ads,
good,
which are annoying with any other social media platform. And there's no hate or politics. It's all about the celebration of travel. So everything is curated, and then it is evergreen. So you create a story, and it's always there.
Cool. And it's mobile, so you can do it in the moment, right? You can create it as you're
you can create a story in 5 minutes. So I've got a lot of stories on there too, of course.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, that's been fun because it's another sort of quest for something new. It's another exploratory. So.
And I love the digital aspect that kind of has followed you throughout your career. I mean, you started filming that first trip, and then what you did at Mungo Park, and now this. That's a theme that carries through your career. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think there has been a commonality, a thread.
Yeah, well, and like you said originally, just to find a better way to share all these experiences that we have. It's great.
Yeah.
Because all kinds of people are doing all kinds of cool stuff, man. It's amazing.
They are, but there is a fundamental belief too that when you travel, the sort of walls of misperception begin to crumble.
Yep.
And as we become more tribal, and people live more and more in silos, and communicate and get their information and news in this never-ending reinforced cycle. The way to break out of it is to travel, because then you discover the commonalities of all humanity, all wildlife, and it changes your perception, and it changes the way you deal with the rest of the world.
You learn things about the world, and you learn things about yourself, both. Yeah, it's interesting.
Very much. It's an internal journey as well, and you can't come back from one of these trips not unchanged.
Yep.
You will be better for it in almost every circumstance, with a better understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. And I think when that recognition came to be at a young age, it's been a lifelong sort of evangelical mission to spread that word. And it just seems that now, for whatever reasons, is a more vital time to get off and see the world and share and understand than than previous.
For a whole host of reasons, too. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
When were you last on a river?
So I was in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia.
Oh, yeah. I
in
was
the
there a couple years
Caucasus
ago.
Mountains.
Yeah, I was there
Oh,
a
isn't
couple
that
years
great?
ago. Beautiful there,
Oh,
yeah.
I was stunned at how
I was too. I was
gorgeous.
amazed. Did you get down to the wine country?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yep. Stayed in the wine country.
Yeah.
And
were you with Eka and her husband?
No.
Okay.
I don't know Eka, I don't think.
Eka is, she put the trip on that I did, kind of a trek. And then her husband, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he had a kayak company in the Bay Area. And he,
oh, really?
Yeah, and he was.
Oh, I know. You mean, well, I'm blanking on his name. He used to work for us.
I think he did.
Yes. I talked to him on the phone, and
Okay.
you're right. They've got a winery.
Yeah, they have a winery. Yeah.
And we were unable to connect on the trip.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. Yeah, he's in the government there, I think, isn't he? Something.
I know he had a government consulting contract at one point. I think
that's.
In fact, when I talked to him, he thanked me because he said I helped him broker.
Oh, cool.
That assignment, which changed his life. So,
so you're on a river over there.
Yes, so I went
Wow.
rafting there. I think it was the last raft trip I've been on. So.
Cool. Yeah. And what other outdoor activities do you participate in? Do you get out every day? Do you hike? You must do
I'm in
hiking.
Los Angeles, so I'm at the beach. So I bike.
Yeah.
I bike almost every day.
Cool.
That's my usual form. And we'll go hiking on the weekends and stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
I kayaked the LA River once, but that was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's good.
no, try to stay as active
Good.
as possible.
And do you have any suggestions or advice for someone wanting to get into the outdoor adventure business or grow their career if they're already in the business industry?
Well, you've asked a number of good questions about the business of Sobek, and it really was not considered a business, and we had no business plan and no discussions about it being a business.
Right.
It really was a passion play from the get-go, and it was a group of people who fell madly in love with this pursuit of exploration, wild rivers, and the exhilaration and intoxication and clarity and understanding that comes from adventure. So that cocktail, got us all drunk with passion, and we went forward with it. And we were so lucky, I think, to be able to keep that thing going and have it grow despite ourselves. So if I had to give any advice, I would say find your passion,
right?
Because I know that there are many circumstances where it doesn't work out, but sometimes it does. And if the passion is strong enough, you become enterprising enough to try to figure out how to do it. We were constantly challenged with how to get around the next bend, as a company, as a guide, as a
right.
From
the rivers to the boardroom, you had to navigate all the bends.
Yeah. So, but if you believe in what you're pursuing enough, you figure out a way, and that's what we did and continue to do. So
that's good advice. Yeah, I think that's what drives us all in this outdoor adventure pursuits. Is we're all here because we love the activity. Ultimately,
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? Do you meditate? You get some exercise on the bike? Sounds like.
Yeah, I bike every day.
Yeah.
I would say that I don't purposefully meditate, but there was a period of time, 15 years ago or something, where when I would go out for a run or a bike ride, I would take a Walkman or something to book on tape or whatever it was. But I've found, in the last 10 years or so, that I prefer those moments alone on the bike or hiking, completely uninterrupted. As far as any sort of intrusion or entertainment or information. So those are my alone times, and that's often, I think, where my creative thinking comes into play, problem solving, and just sort of probing, trying to figure out all the things that we all try to figure out. So.
Right. I agree with you. I was one of those guys that see people skiing all the time with earphones in their ears. I could never do that, and I could never hike or bike with anything. I just had to hear the rush of the wind, and you just let your thoughts wander. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. So,
do you have any favorite books or books you give as gifts? Or a favorite?
Well, I've written
You've written a bunch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some great ones, by the way. Thank you for that.
Books, I think. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a little bit of a bibliophile, so I have more books than I can handle. So I love reading, and I typically read on every airplane flight and every evening. So
same here.
So let's see what I can. I was just reading Barry Lopez's new book.
But that's good.
Which is fantastic. He's always good. It's called Horizon.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that. But I have a long list of favorite books too, and I'm reading to my son H. Rider Haggard's King Solomon's Mines right now.
Oh, cool.
Which I've read, I think, twice before. And it still holds up. It's a great book.
That's good. Yeah. How about a favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
Under $100. That's great, because I'm as you know, I'm a judge in the Innovation Awards.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You
week,
mentioned that. Yeah.
So I'll be judging those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I would say under $100. Well, I'm still, despite all the digital pioneering, I'm still very analog in some things, and I love my manual notebooks.
Oh yeah, okay.
Even though some of them are becoming quite expensive. So who makes those? I'm trying to remember the name of the company.
I always have one of those little moleskins with me.
Yes, the moleskins. Yeah. So I've got right on my desk right now, and I've got
that's size of a 3x5 card. Yeah,
I've got 7 moleskins right here. So
I've got about,
and they claim it was
6. Yep, same.
Yeah, and they claim that it's the notebook that Hemingway used, and
they're great. They're very handy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I always carry one, and take little notes, and it's better than trying to put something in the phone for me.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, you never know when an idea is going to pop into your head, and sometimes you don't always have the phone or something. Yeah, it's good.
So Olaf Malver, that came back to me. He was the kayaker who ended up in Georgia.
Olaf, that's right. Yep. Good. Yeah, good memory. Good. I'm glad you remembered that, Olaf.
Yeah.
I'll have to reach out to Eka. I haven't talked to her since I was.
He's a good guy.
Back. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah. He didn't go on our trip, but he joined us for dinner the last night. And we got to see Eka's winery and taste some of their wine, and then spend some time in the Georgian wineries. And they have some great wine and great restaurants, and just
I know, yeah,
ancient things to see. Very cool.
I fell in love with Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners or ask of our listeners?
I think that's a pretty tight. Little exercise here. I enjoyed it.
That's been very fun. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate
a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing you next week at the outdoor show.
Yeah.
If people want to reach out to you, how's the best way to get in touch if they have questions or want to follow up? You have a website or?
I do have a website. It's richardbanks.com.
Okay, cool.
And there's an email in there, et cetera. So it's easy to get hold of me. So.
We'll link to that in the show notes too, and link to all the stuff we talked about. And, it's been great. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week. And
me too.
Telling some more stories.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. They're endless.
All right. They are. All right. Have a good night.
Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, be sure and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Be sure and go to the outdoorbizpodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Have a great week and be sure to get outside.